Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Creature Commandos Season 1, Episode 5. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I did not know where this was all going with the whole Professor McPherson thing. I was like, oh, we're going to learn a little bit more about her or something. Like I said, the most I looked into it was just like, yeah, she's like a professor specifically from Gotham was what I could find, but I don't know if there was something else. But like, she was acting weird, and I was like, oh, tell me the things, when she was hitting on students and stuff. I was like, well, that's kind of a big no-no in any form of education. But then she's being like, oh yeah, tell me your favorite things about the mascara. And he's like, oh, wrong, boring. Most interesting thing is the lesbians. That in itself felt like a Harley Quinn series moment there. But I was like, yeah, why is she acting weird and so different? And even I was like, what's going on? And it's not until Rick said the thing of, oh, it's probably someone in disguise. I was like, oh, Clayface, right? Because I only know he was in this because I didn't watch the full trailer, but I know he was in this because I watch enough stuff where people talk about it, because people were talking about, oh, Clayface is in this show, even if it's just briefly. And in fact, he's voiced by Alan Tudyk, who's, doing Phosphorus's voice. But also the interesting thing about that is, speaking of the Harley Quinn series, he voices Clayface, but also Joker. There's some other voices, but those like the two main ones he voiced. So that was like, oh, interesting getting Alan Tudyk to voice a character he kind of already voices, but doing a different version of it. But either way, but I was like, interesting. It leaves a lot of questions to be answered. But let's stay on the Clayface side of things. Well, on the Rick and Eric. And I even love that Rick Flag calls him like Frank for short. So I was like, I like that. But it's like, oh, should we go in there? And I love, like, there's a whole bunch of students watching. He's like, oh, I must have misplaced my eye contact. I have to be around here somewhere. It's like, all right, like the best way to get the bride on your side is to be a hero. He's like, oh, so you want me to go in there and kill her? It's like, no. He's like, oh, just how about a few students? He's like, no, why are you jumping to murder? He was like, you said to be a hero. Why is being a hero your immediate thought is like, well, I guess it's like, oh, this person's obviously maybe a bad person, so let's jump to immediately murder them. It's like, it's so interesting that Rick Flag Sr. has that perspective. I mean, to be fair, and I talked about this before, Junior had that perspective of like, everyone else is a little gun-ho to be, I mean, you're villains, so it makes sense you're really gun-ho to do some murder and stuff like that, because you're not going to let something as pesky as a conscience hold you back type of situation, so. But it's like, yeah, they went back to her place, broke in. I also love Eric making a whole point of like, oh, a cat on a leash. To be fair, it's not something you see that often. I always see dogs on a leash. I never see cats on a leash. I even, like, because in the neighborhood I'm living in, like, I just see a whole bunch of, like, I keep seeing this, like, past few weeks, I've just kept seeing the same 2 or 3 different cats just, like, free roaming around the neighborhood. So it's just, it's interesting because I'm like, I don't think I've ever really seen someone put a leash on a cat before. And he's looking at, like, oh, it's kind of a bad omen. He's like, you should listen to me on this type of stuff. He's like, because I've lived with a gypsy back in the day, which we'll focus on Frankenstein's past. Well, Eric's past in a little bit, but I'm going to finish running through all of this. So, but they find McPherson's body and she's dead, because the thing Rick was kind of suggesting was like, right, maybe it was all malarkey, that the one that came to visit last episode wasn't the real McPherson, that was already Clayface, maybe. So the thing he was saying was like, right, Clayface might be in league with Cersei, but part of me was wondering, like, could that be the case? Because the whole thing was like, oh, she's not supposed to be. Well, it was specifically McPherson who told the thing of, well, she can't like control what you see, which that could have been BS. There's also a part of me that's like, I honestly wouldn't put it past Waller to be responsible for this in some shape or form. I don't know what she's planning to get out of this, especially later on when Alana's like, oh yeah, like, these people don't know that their government lies to them. It's like, I don't know what to make of it. Like, it could just be like, yo, Clayface is working with Cersei, but that is the thing, like, why would... I mean, there doesn't necessarily have to be some, like, direct correlation for people to work together. Because to be fair, this whole thing about Themyscira and Cersei, it could just be a thing of just like Cersei's promising the sons of Themyscira, that they could come to Themyscira. Probably said the same thing to, Clayface. I mean, Clayface is a criminal, so you could probably just pay him off and stuff like that. But his obsession with like lesbians and stuff like that, and talking about that's a cool. That could be what Cersei promised him. And like, oh yeah, like the island is riddled with lesbians, and maybe that was enough to get it. So it could just as easily have been Cersei, and it could just be a thing of, no, I can't affect like what I show you. All I had to do was play up the story, and you bought it. You bought in on the BS. But like I said, I also can't put it past this to be some machinations by Waller, because she can do some devious stuff, especially if it's for the greater good, specifically if it's for the greater good of the United States of America. America's best interest will always come first when it comes to Waller. So I'm just leaving that possibility out there. Once again, I don't know what the reasoning for that could be. It's like maybe like Alana and them could be a potential threat, and it's like we want to nip that in the bud before they become a threat. So we came up with some BS. I mean, let's not forget, like Project Starfish, the whole Starro situation. That was just the U.S. government covering up, their involvement with that, so that's all that was. So who's to say the same thing ain't kind of happening here? I don't know. We'll have to wait to see. But yeah, also Clayface was playing a game that looked like that was Mortal Kombat 1 specifically, if I'm not mistaken. Someone can correct me. I didn't go back to check, but I was like, interesting, because obviously that's under the Warner Brothers umbrella, because NetherRealms, because it's a Warner Brothers game, isn't it? Mortal Kombat, because I think it is a Warner Brothers property. Because obviously that's why you're able to have the Injustice situation be what it is. So tangent, because the NetherRealm team works on it. Which I guess you can't really do that, because like that's a constantly recurring game in Superman and Lois, was like Jonathan and Jordan would constantly be playing Injustice throughout the entire show. But either way. But yeah, Eric and Rick go toe to toe with Clayface, and he whoops their ass. Like, he fucks Rick up. He's like, kind of does a Bane backbreaker on him. I was like, Jesus Christ. I was like, you are getting jacked up. It's not like, you're fighting something made of clay. Like, no shots or punches are really going to do anything. The only reason why they were able to beat him is because Eric electrocuted himself, and in the process electrocuted Clayface. Didn't kill him, but probably knocked him unconscious. I even love he's splattered on the ground. I don't think that's implying Clayface is dead. It's like, no, he's unconscious and he's not reforming himself. You probably have to wait for him to wake up to reform himself, but we'll see. It makes sense why Eric wouldn't be affected by electricity. In fact, it looked like he was getting off to it. I guess the surge of it probably scratches a certain part of his brain, because it's it's probably like that jolt of life being shot through you again. It's probably very, very exhilarating. Probably like getting a caffeine sugar rush all at once type of situation, maybe. Also, Eric is... this all goes together, but this episode, you'd almost think okay, we got the Weasel episode, so it made us more sympathetic to Weasel. This episode, you're like, maybe they'll make us more sympathetic to Frankenstein, to Eric, and it's yeah, he's done some fuck shit, and we know that he basically stalked the bride all the way through, but maybe we'll find out there's a nugget of good. Nope, fuck that. He's still a shitty person. In fact, you find out he's even shittier. You already thought it was man, he can't be shittier than I already thought he was. It's managed to add some monochrome of elements of shittiness to him. First and foremost, while Rick is on the phone being like, yo, Ilana, the Commandos are coming there to kill you. I love that in the background, just Eric's like, you tell her about me. Tell her how great I am. Tell her how much of an awesome dude. He's like, the fact that matters, you didn't tell her that we were best friends. That how can the bride know how awesome I am if you don't tell Alana that we're best buds? He's like, dude, the bride is going there to kill Alana. Why would she want to listen to anything the bride has to say about bigging you up? He's just like, I don't think this relationship is as two-way street as I thought it was. I can't believe I bought into this nonsense. It's all right, hide while Clayface is entering the house. He's like, fine. And he just stands behind a lamp or something. It's pick a different spot. Just hide over there by the bed. He's just like, ugh. But there, while after the fight, after being beaten down and broken, and he's up there saying Rick, you can't die until you answer some questions of mine. It's did the bride ever talk about me? And he's just coughing. It's like, oh, is that a yes? You know, and just asking questions. And it's like, I'm dying, dude. Leave me alone. He's like, tell her the truth. And passes out in his arms. And it's like, okay. I mean, what does that have to entail, considering, like, well, the bride kind of knows the truth. I mean, not unless there's more to it, but I'm like, what truth could there be? Not unless it was some stuff about, like, oh, I killed Frankenstein for not just out of jealousy. There was other reasons why. But, I mean, I don't know. Like, that's about all I can maybe not justify, but think that could be the truth. I mean, he's like, oh, just tell her how you feel and stuff like that. It's like, well, she knows how he feels, and she's wholeheartedly rejected him for centuries. So I don't know what to make of it. Flashback with Frankenstein after the whole situation, getting burned, got to some water, drifted down the lake, and he gets saved by Bogdana. Ends up saving him, taking care of him. She's blind, and so, I mean, that's the benefit of it. She doesn't, instead of, being treated like, this is the person who treats you well, because she doesn't get so caught up in, like, what she can't see. Because for her, and I love that, and I thought it was beautiful, where he's just like, close your eyes, and she's like, oh, do you see your bride? That's all you need. She's like, even though I don't have my sight, I see so much beautiful stuff you can't even comprehend. And it's like, it's something beautiful. And you would think, as someone in Eric's situation, so worried about what people would think of him, it's like, this is someone who looks past all that, who enjoys being around you. And it's like, right. Even offering this place to be your home. It's like, yeah, you went hunting. My father would be happy knowing that you were able to, utilize a gun for hunting. And she's like, yeah, I love having you around, even though you're a grouch. And he's like, Bogdana, don't forget, I have this shotgun and I will use it against you. So, but once he's healed up enough, he decided, you know what? No, I got to go find my bride. She tried to kill me, but that was just her being flirtatious and stuff like that. It's like, no, we were meant to be. It's like, yes. Home dude is Delulu. He is the most delusional stalker person ever. The guy's all, I guess that's kind of, you're going to have a few screws loose when you're the reanimated remains of different people put together to make a person, So, and what was his resolution to make it so that Bogdana would not have to be alone? He brutally murdered her. I was like, that's your solution? Hey, Bogdana, you don't have to worry about me leaving you. You'll die. In this way, you won't have to suffer through loneliness. It's like, why don't you just take yourself out, Eric? If you're like, oh, so concerned about being alone, but it's like, well, I don't have to worry about, I can't take myself out. My love is out there. We're meant to be. And if I take myself out here, she'll be alone. So it's like, I'm also wondering, I'm like, is he trying to have like a Romeo? Like, he is delusional enough, and he's got such a twisted perspective, like twisted fantasized notion of love. I could easily see him being like, yo, me and the bride are meant to be. Let's have our Romeo and Juliet moment. I could definitely see him doing that. So for him, it's like, well, we'll be together in the afterlife, so let's both, kill ourselves type of situation. I could definitely see him going down that route. Because killing Bogdana just so she won't have to be alone, and in his mind, it's like, oh, I'm doing you a service. If you can't have my love, at least you don't have to be alone. Because I can only see that because he seems like the dramatic enough person. It's like, yo, because I can't be with the person I love, even though I am a literal monster, even though, like, we're talking them being literal monsters, but they're less of a monsters than he is. He still wants to live on and terrorize her. It's all kinds of fucked. So we'll see where that kind of goes. Oh, it had the audacity too to leave Yvonne, the dog, outside. It's like, oh, because he or she wouldn't understand, and ends up taking the dog with him. It's like, well, how long before you end up, like, for whatever reason, deciding to put the dog down? I'd almost wondered if you were going to take the dog out in the woods and kind of Yeller it or something like that. But maybe, hopefully the dog just died of old age, and hopefully Eric didn't just like snap on the dog and literally snap it. Oh boy. Once again, I was expecting, like, oh, maybe we get a little sentimental backstory. It's like, nope. I'd heard DJ Wooldridge talk about the fact is that he did not like this portrayal of Frankenstein because he's big into Frankenstein, how he's depicted in the comics, and not liking this version. I have no connection to Frankenstein, so I'm perfectly fine with this. Him just being a total fucking monster. I'm perfectly fine with that. But, and I guess it's like, it's not a character that typically is going to be that important to people. So it's kind of like, yeah, do whatever you want to with the character. It doesn't mean that much, to people. So you can kind of redefine it into whatever you want, unless you're, a Frankenstein fan slash stan of the character from the comics. So that's an interesting situation. So along with all that, we have the Commandos making their way back, and Ilana ends up passing on her message to to Alexei, who's just trying to bide enough time to trap the Commandos, and they get surrounded. And Alexei's like, right, like, surrender. We've sacrificed. We are willing to die for the princess. And then immediately gets half his head punched off by Phosphorus. And Phosphorus is like, oh, that sucks. I like that guy. So the Commandos in and get up separated. Obviously, Nina and Weasel are the only ones that kind of didn't do much. They're just kind of hiding. Well, we saw Nina hiding. We don't know where the hell the Weasel is. But the ones who put forth the biggest fight is Phosphorus and the Bride. Phosphorus, him stripping naked, and then like the missile or whatever coming towards him, large shell coming towards him. He burns it, stands there in front of the tank, literally holds up the middle finger as he phases and burns through the tank, and then his hands like phase and burn through those guys. It's just like, that was metal as hell, dude. I was like, that's so fucking brutal. And then later on, the guy's begging, he's like, please spare me. And then Phosphorus just steps on him. And so when you cut back to the dude, it's just his squished in head with a boot, like a footprint. It's like, that is just gnarly. You have the Bride kind of going Dante from Devil May Cry. When I see her pistols, it's not like, it just, I don't know why, like when I see dual pistols, my nerdy brain immediately thinks of Ebony and Ivory. But yeah, like unloading there, eventually rips off the arm of some of the soldiers and has some of their cannons and starts blasting. It's just a brutal situation all around. It's like, yeah, they were the biggest threat amongst the group. And now it's just like, once again, everyone's just kind of scattered going their own way. And Alana, as I brought up earlier in the episode, was like, right, I feel bad for them because they're being lied to by their government. So I don't know. Once again, that's not too out of the realm of possibility when we're talking about Waller and some of the F stuff she's done, even though in this universe, the effed up stuff she's been up to has been exposed. At least, the Suicide Squad front. Not everything she's done, because the whole Project Starfish was never put on blast. At least that's the only... Well, we don't know. Because we know Adebayo, like, released, like... It's been a while since I saw the season 1 finale, but it was mainly, like, all the shady stuff her mom did. But I don't know if we got into specifics of it, about some of the shady stuff, or was it just the Suicide Squad stuff that mainly made the headlines? Who knows? So where this goes from here, I have no idea. Obviously, we're getting one backstory per episode, so I'm curious to see what I'm sure, like, if I looked ahead, I could probably figure it out. But I'm curious whose backstory we're getting next episode. I don't want to know. I'm just saying figuratively, whether it's going to be Nina or whether it's going to be Phosphorus. Once again, because James Gunn said like 4 and 7 are his favorites, I believe. So I'm curious which one in 7. I mean, season 7 is going to be the season finale, so it makes sense. I believe maybe sometime this week, I think it was announced that the show's already gotten renewed for a second season, I believe. Do not quote me on that. I saw that somewhere. I didn't really look into it. I'd usually save that for the season finale, but it's on my mind, so I figured I'd talk about it now. But it's like, I'm curious to see how this all plays out. Because I started wondering, especially last episode, I was like, well, like, this could all be a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, because once again, Cersei has, like, not Cersei, Ilana has, like, claw marks on her face, and I was like, oh, that's got to be from Weasel, right? It's like, well, I was like, could it be a self-fulfilling prophecy of, by attacking Ilana, you send her down the path of World War III type of thing? But she definitely has her own plans and schemes, and she, like I said, it felt like she was getting close to Rick Flag for the sake of, you are a good person working and operating for a corrupt government, and I'm trying to expose it, and I'm gonna have to do some evil for the greater good type of thing. We'll see how that all fares out and find out the truth behind all this, hopefully. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.